The morning fog was just beginning to lift from the glass towers of Palo Alto as I walked through the sleek lobby of TechFlow Innovations. My heart was racing, not from the 3 flights of stairs I'd climbed to save elevator time, but from the weight of what today meant. After 6 months of late nights, endless debugging, and countless cups of coffee, I was finally going to present my AI-powered customer service prototype to the board. "Are you ready for this, Marcus?" asked Sarah, my closest colleague, as she caught up with me in the hallway. Her genuine smile was a welcome contrast to the sterile corporate environment around us. "As ready as I'll ever be," I replied, adjusting my tie for the 3rd time that morning. The laptop bag felt heavier than usual, containing not just my computer, but months of dreams and aspirations. The conference room was intimidating, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Stanford campus, a massive mahogany table, and leather chairs that probably cost more than my monthly rent. CEO Richard Morrison sat at the head of the table, his silver hair perfectly styled, checking his Rolex impatiently. The 3 potential investors from Singapore were already seated, their expressions professionally neutral. "Marcus, you have 15 minutes, Morrison said, without looking up from his phone. "Make it count." I opened my laptop, my hands slightly trembling as I connected to the projection system. The familiar blue glow of my interface filled the screen, and for a moment, I felt that surge of pride I always experienced when seeing my creation come to life. "Good morning, everyone. What I'm about to show you is a revolutionary approach to customer service automation," I began, my voice gaining confidence as I fell into the rhythm of my presentation. "Traditional chatbots fail because they can't understand context or emotion. My prototype uses advanced natural language processing combined with sentiment analysis to create truly empathetic customer interactions. I demonstrated the system, showing how it could detect frustration in a customer's message and respond with appropriate empathy, how it could seamlessly escalate complex issues to human agents, and how it learned from each interaction to improve future responses. For 12 minutes, I had their attention. The investors leaned forward, asking technical questions that I answered with enthusiasm. Sarah gave me an encouraging nod from the back of the room. Everything was going perfectly. Then Morrison stood up. "This is trash," he said, his voice cutting through the room like a blade. "Absolute garbage." The room fell silent. I felt my face flush as every eye turned to me. "Sir, you've wasted 6 months of company time and resources on this amateur hour nonsense," Morrison continued, walking around the table toward me. "We're trying to close a Series B funding round, and you're showing them some college project?" My throat felt dry. "Mr. Morrison, the prototype shows real promise. The accuracy rates are—" "I don't want to hear it." He reached over and slammed my laptop shut, the sharp sound echoing through the silent room. "This meeting is over. Gentlemen," he addressed the investors, "I apologize for this waste of your time. Sarah, please escort our guests to the executive lounge. I'll join you shortly to discuss real opportunities." I stood there, frozen, as the investors filed out. One of them, a woman in her 50s, glanced back at me with what might have been sympathy. Sarah lingered by the door, her face a mixture of anger and concern. "Marcus, I'm sorry," she whispered as she passed. "This isn't over." But it felt like it was. Morrison had already left, leaving me alone in the conference room with my closed laptop and shattered confidence. Through the window, I could see students walking across the Stanford quad, their futures bright with possibility. Mine felt like it had just been crushed under the weight of public humiliation. I packed my laptop slowly, my hands shaking not from nerves now, but from a mixture of anger and devastation. 6 months of work, dismissed in seconds. My colleagues in the hallway avoided eye contact as I walked back to my desk. The whispers started before I even reached my cubicle. "Did you hear what happened in the boardroom? Morrison completely destroyed him. I heard he called it trash." I sat at my desk, staring at the blank screen of my desktop computer. Around me, the office buzzed with its usual energy, keyboards clicking, phones ringing, the hum of innovation and ambition. But I felt separate from it all, like I was watching through glass. My phone buzzed. A text from my younger sister, Emma. "How did the presentation go? I'm so proud of you." I stared at the message, unable to respond. How do you tell someone who believes in you that you've just been publicly humiliated, that your dreams have been called trash in front of the people who could have made them reality? The day crawled by. I went through the motions of my regular work, but my mind kept replaying those terrible moments. Morrison's voice saying, "This is trash." The sound of my laptop slamming shut, the uncomfortable silence, the way everyone avoided looking at me afterward. At 6 p.m., as the office began to empty, Sarah approached my desk. "Marcus, you okay?" I looked up at her, seeing genuine concern in her eyes. "I've been better." Morrison was out of line. What he did was unprofessional and cruel. "Maybe he was right," I said, the words tasting bitter. "Maybe it is trash." Sarah sat on the edge of my desk. "I saw your demo. It's not trash. It's innovative, thoughtful, and it works. Morrison's he's under pressure from the board. The funding round isn't going as well as he hoped. That doesn't excuse what he did." "No, it doesn't. But it also doesn't mean your work is worthless." I managed a weak smile. "Thanks, Sarah. I needed to hear that." As I finally packed up to leave, I caught my reflection in the dark window. I looked tired, defeated, but underneath the disappointment, I could feel something else stirring, a quiet determination. Morrison might have closed my laptop, but he couldn't close my mind. The prototype was still there, still working, still revolutionary. Walking out into the cool evening air, I made a decision. I wouldn't let this be the end of my story. It would be the beginning of something new. The next morning felt like walking into a battlefield where everyone knew you'd lost. I arrived at TechFlow 15 minutes early, hoping to avoid the morning rush and the inevitable stairs. The elevator ride to the 4th floor felt eternal, each floor ding reminding me of yesterday's humiliation. My cubicle sat in the middle of the open floor plan, impossible to hide in. As I settled into my chair, I could feel the weight of glances from my co-workers. Some quickly looked away when I caught their eye. Others whispered behind their monitors. The story had clearly spread through the office grapevine. "Marcus," a voice called out. I turned to see Jake, one of the junior developers, approaching with what looked like genuine enthusiasm. "Dude, I heard about yesterday. That was brutal, but I wanted you to know, I think your AI prototype is genius." His words caught me off guard. "Thanks, Jake. That means a lot. Seriously, man. I've been thinking about it all night. The way it processes emotional context, that's next-level stuff. Morrison's an idiot if he can't see that." Before I could respond, Jake glanced over his shoulder and quickly lowered his voice. "Look, I know talking about this openly isn't smart right now, but a few of us were wondering, do you have plans for the prototype? I mean, outside of here?" I hesitated. The thought had been spinning in my head all night, but hearing someone else voice it made it feel more real. I'm not sure. I haven't thought that far ahead." "Well, if you decide to do something with it, count me in. I'm not the only one who thinks you got screwed over." As Jake walked away, I felt a small spark of hope. Maybe yesterday hadn't been a complete disaster. Maybe there were people who saw what I saw in my work. The morning dragged on. I tried to focus on my assigned tasks, debugging legacy code and updating documentation, but my mind kept wandering. Every time I heard Morrison's voice from his corner office, my stomach tightened. Around 11 a.m., he walked past my desk without acknowledging me, heading to another meeting with his usual confident stride. Sarah stopped by during lunch break, carrying 2 sandwiches from the deli across the street. "Thought you might not feel like going out," she said, placing one on my desk. "Turkey and Swiss, your favorite. You didn't have to do that." "I know." She pulled up a chair. "How are you holding up?" I took a bite of the sandwich, realizing I hadn't eaten since yesterday's light breakfast. I keep replaying it in my head. The way he just dismissed months of work in seconds. Morrison's dealing with his own problems. The Singapore investors weren't just here for your presentation. They're considering pulling out of the funding round entirely. The company's in more trouble than most people realize. This was news to me. "How do you know that?" "I work closely with the finance team, remember? The burn rate is higher than projected, and we're behind on 2 major client deliveries. Morrison's under massive pressure from the board. That still doesn't excuse what he did." "No, it doesn't, but it explains it." Sarah leaned closer. "Marcus, I've been thinking about what you said yesterday, about maybe Morrison being right. He's not. I've seen a lot of tech demos in my 5 years here, and yours was the most impressive. Then why did he react like that? Because he's scared. Your prototype could revolutionize customer service, but it's also a huge risk. Morrison's playing it safe, focusing on incremental improvements to existing products rather than breakthrough innovations. I considered this. So, what do I do now? That's up to you. But I'll tell you what I'd do. I'd keep working on it. On your own time, with your own resources, show the world what Morrison was too scared to see. That afternoon, I made a decision that would change everything. Instead of wallowing in self-pity, I started planning. I opened a new document on my personal laptop and began outlining what I'd need to continue developing the prototype independently. The technical requirements were manageable. I could use cloud computing resources and open source libraries. The bigger challenge would be time and motivation. But as I worked through the logistics, I felt something I hadn't experienced since yesterday morning: excitement. Around 4 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Hey Marcus, it's Jake. Got your number from the company directory. A few of us are grabbing drinks after work at Murphy's Pub. Want to join? We'd love to hear more about your AI project." I stared at the message, surprised. Jake had mentioned others were interested, but I hadn't expected this. Part of me wanted to go home and hide, but a bigger part was curious about who else might be willing to support my work. I texted back, "I'll be there." Murphy's Pub was a classic tech worker hangout, dimly lit, with craft beer on tap, and the kind of atmosphere that encouraged honest conversation. When I arrived, I found Jake at a corner table with 3 other people I recognized from the office: Maria from the UX team, David from back-end development, and surprisingly, Tom from marketing. "Marcus," Maria waved me over, "we ordered you a beer. Hope IPA is okay." As I sat down, Tom immediately leaned forward. "Okay, I have to ask. Is it true that Morrison actually slammed your laptop shut?" "Unfortunately, yes." "What an ass," David muttered. "I've been working here for 3 years, and I've never seen anything that unprofessional. The worst part," Maria added, "is that your demo was brilliant. I was watching from the back during the first part. The way your AI handled that customer complaint scenario, it was like watching a human conversation, but faster and more consistent." I felt my chest tighten with emotion. After 24 hours of feeling like a failure, hearing these words from respected colleagues was overwhelming. "Thanks," I managed. "That means everything to me right now." Jake raised his glass. "To Marcus for creating something revolutionary, and to Morrison for being too stupid to recognize it." We all clinked glasses, and for the first time since yesterday, I laughed. "So what's next?" Tom asked. "Are you going to shelve the project?" I took a sip of beer, considering my words carefully. "Actually, I'm thinking about continuing it, on my own." The table went quiet. David was the first to speak. That's a big decision. Are you sure you want to go up against TechFlow?" "I'm not going up against anyone. I'm just not ready to give up on something I believe in." "What would you need?" Maria asked. "Hypothetically speaking. Honestly, the technical side I can handle, but I'd need help with user experience design, maybe some marketing insight, and definitely someone who understands back-end scaling." Jake grinned. "Hypothetically speaking, of course." "Of course." Tom leaned back in his chair. "You know, I've been getting bored with our current campaigns. They're all so safe. Working on something truly innovative sounds appealing." "Same here," Maria said. "I'm tired of designing interfaces for the same old products." David nodded slowly. "I've got vacation time saved up. Could be interesting to spend it on something meaningful." I looked around the table at these 4 people who barely knew me outside of work, who had nothing to gain from supporting my project, and felt something I hadn't experienced in months: hope. "This is crazy," I said. "We're talking about developing a commercial product in our spare time." "The best ideas usually are crazy," Jake replied. "Besides, what's the worst that could happen? We fail. You've already experienced that. Everything from here is upside." As we talked through the evening, discussing possibilities and challenges, I realized something important. Yesterday, Morrison had tried to end my story. Instead, he'd given me the push I needed to start writing a new one. Walking home that night, I felt lighter than I had in months. The prototype wasn't dead, it was just beginning its real journey, and I wouldn't be making that journey alone. 2 weeks had passed since that night at Murphy's Pub, and my apartment had transformed into something resembling a startup accelerator. My dining table was covered with 3 laptops, a whiteboard I'd bought from Target, and enough coffee cups to stock a small cafe. The living room had become our unofficial headquarters, where Jake, Maria, David, and Tom would gather after their regular work hours. "I can't believe we're actually doing this," Maria said, stretching her arms above her head. It was 11 p.m. on a Thursday, and we'd been working for 4 hours straight on the user interface redesign. "My roommate thinks I've lost my mind." "Join the club," David replied from his spot on the floor, surrounded by printed server architecture diagrams. "My girlfriend keeps asking when I'm going to get a life outside of work. Little does she know this is my life outside of work." I looked up from my screen, where lines of code were creating the improved natural language processing algorithms. "Guys, if this is too much, don't you dare!" Jake interrupted. not looking away from his laptop. "We're in this together. Besides, I haven't been this excited about a project since, well, ever." The work was intense. During the day, we maintained our normal jobs at TechFlow, acting like nothing had changed. But the moment 6 p.m. hit, we'd disperse to our respective homes, grab dinner, and reconvene at my place by 7:30. We'd work until midnight, sometimes later, fueled by pizza, energy drinks, and the kind of passionate determination that only comes from working on something you truly believe in. The challenges were real. My savings were dwindling from the cloud computing costs, and I'd had to pick up freelance coding work on weekends to make ends meet. The others were volunteering their time, but I knew they were sacrificing their personal lives for this project. "Marcus, you need to see this," Tom called from the kitchen, where he'd set up his marketing station. "I've been researching the customer service automation market, and the timing couldn't be better. There's a huge gap between what's available and what businesses actually need." I walked over to see his laptop screen filled with market research data, competitor analysis, and potential customer profiles. "This is incredible work, Tom. You've basically created a business plan." "That's because I think we need one. We can't keep treating this like a hobby project if we want it to succeed." He was right. Over the past 2 weeks, what started as a way to prove Morrison wrong had evolved into something much bigger. We weren't just improving my prototype. We were building a company. "There's something else," Tom continued. "I've been thinking about how we handle the intellectual property situation. The original code was developed on company time, but everything we're doing now is completely independent." This was the elephant in the room we'd been avoiding. "What are you suggesting?" "I think we need to consult with a lawyer, make sure we're protected." David looked up from his diagrams. "That's going to cost money we don't have." "Actually," Maria interjected, "my cousin's a tech lawyer. She might be willing to give us some free advice if I explain the situation." The legal concerns were just one of many obstacles we faced. The technical challenges were equally daunting. My original prototype had been impressive, but scaling it to handle thousands of concurrent users required completely rewriting the back-end architecture. David had been working on this problem for days, and I could see the frustration building. "The latency is still too high," he said, running his hands through his hair. "When we simulate 1,000 users, response times jump to over 3 seconds. That's not acceptable for real-time customer service." "What if we implement a caching layer?" Jake suggested. "I tried that. It helps, but not enough." I sat down next to David, looking at his code. "What if we approach this differently? Instead of trying to process everything in real time, what if we pre-process common queries and use machine learning to predict likely responses?" "That's actually brilliant," David said, his eyes lighting up. "We could train the system on historical customer service data and have responses ready before the questions are even asked." "It would require a massive training dataset," Jake pointed out. "I might be able to help with that," Tom said. "I've been researching potential pilot customers. There are several mid-sized companies that might be willing to share anonymized customer service data in exchange for free access to our beta." This was how our evenings went. Problem, discussion, solution, new problem. It was exhausting and exhilarating at the same time. We were building something revolutionary, but we were also walking a tightrope between innovation and burnout. The personal toll was becoming evident. I'd lost weight from surviving on coffee and takeout. My relationship with my girlfriend, Ashley, was strained. She'd been supportive initially, but 2 weeks of cancelled dates and late-night coding sessions had worn thin her patience. "I barely see you anymore," she said during one of our increasingly rare phone calls. "When you're not at work, you're working on this project. When do we get to spend time together?" "Just a few more weeks," I promised. "Once we get the beta stable, things will calm down." "That's what you said last week." She wasn't wrong. The project had consumed my life, but I couldn't stop. Every improvement to the algorithm, every breakthrough in the user interface, every positive piece of market research felt like validation. We were creating something that could change how businesses interact with their customers. The breakthrough came at 2 a.m. on a Friday night. David had been working on the scaling problem when suddenly he shouted, "I got it!" We all rushed to his laptop. "The trick was distributed processing," he explained excitedly. "Instead of trying to handle everything on one server, we spread the load across multiple instances and use a smart routing algorithm to direct queries to the least busy processor." I watched as he ran the simulation. 1,000 concurrent users. Response time, 0.3 seconds. "That's incredible," Maria breathed. "That's commercial-grade performance," Jake added. I felt tears welling up in my eyes. 2 weeks ago, Morrison had called my work trash. Now we had something that could compete with the best customer service platforms in the world. Guys, I said, my voice thick with emotion, I think we might actually have something here. Tom raised his energy drink can. To the best underground development team in Silicon Valley. We all clinked our cans together, and for a moment the exhaustion and stress melted away. We were 5 people with day jobs working out of my apartment, but we'd just created something extraordinary. As the others packed up to go home, Jake lingered behind. Marcus, I want you to know, whatever happens with this project, these past 2 weeks have been the best of my career. Working with passionate people on something meaningful. This is what I got into tech for. Thanks, Jake. I couldn't have done this without you guys. You wouldn't have had to if Morrison hadn't been such an ass. I laughed. You know what? I'm starting to think Morrison did me a favor. If he hadn't humiliated me, I never would have taken this risk. Sometimes the best things come from the worst moments, Jake said, heading toward the door. See you tomorrow night? Wouldn't miss it. After he left, I sat alone in my apartment, surrounded by the evidence of our late-night work sessions. My laptop was still open, displaying the clean, efficient code we'd written together. The prototype was no longer just my project. It had become our shared dream. I opened my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found Ashley's number. It was late, but I needed to call her. Marcus, it's 2:30 a.m. Is everything okay? I'm sorry, I said. I'm sorry for being absent, for prioritizing the project over us, for making you feel like you don't matter. Marcus, but I need you to know that we're on the verge of something incredible, something that could change everything. I just need a little more time. There was a long pause. How much more time? I don't know, but I promise you, as soon as we get this to market, things will be different. Okay, she said softly, I'll wait. But Marcus, don't lose yourself in this project. Remember that success means nothing if you don't have anyone to share it with. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet of my apartment thinking about her words. The project was everything to me, but she was right. Success without relationships was just another form of failure. I made a mental note to do better, to find balance. But first, we had a prototype to finish and a world to change. 3 weeks into our underground development, something extraordinary happened. I was at my desk at TechFlow, pretending to work on a routine database optimization while actually researching machine learning models, when my personal phone buzzed with an unknown international number. Marcus Chen? The voice had a slight accent. European, maybe German. Yes, speaking. My name is Klaus Weber. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Hartmann Industries in Berlin. I hope you don't mind me calling directly, but I obtained your number through some rather unconventional means. My heart rate spiked. I'm sorry, who did you say you were? Klaus Weber, CTO of Hartmann Industries. We're a mid-sized manufacturing company, but we've been expanding rapidly into digital services. I'm calling because we've been following your work on customer service automation. I glanced around the office, making sure no one was listening. I'm not sure what you mean. Your AI prototype, the one that processes emotional context in customer interactions. We've seen the demo. This was impossible. The only people who had seen our work were the 5 of us and the investors from 3 weeks ago. How exactly did you see it? Klaus chuckled. The tech world is smaller than you think, Mr. Chen. One of our investors was in your original presentation. He shared a recording with our European Tech Consortium. Your technology has been generating quite a bit of interest over here. My mouth went dry. A recording? Yes. I believe one of the Singapore investors recorded the demonstration on his phone. Very impressed by what he saw, though apparently your CEO wasn't as enthusiastic. Morrison. The humiliation that had driven me to work nights and weekends had somehow become my introduction to the European market. Mr. Weber, I'm not sure what you're looking for. We'd like to license your technology. Or better yet, we'd like to partner with you to develop it further. We have customers across Germany, Austria, and Switzerland who would pay handsomely for this kind of innovation. I stood up from my desk, walking toward the break room for privacy. I'm flattered, but the technology isn't ready for commercial deployment. From what we've seen, it's more advanced than anything currently available. We're willing to invest in further development. How does €500,000 sound for a partnership agreement? I nearly dropped my phone. €500,000 was more money than I'd ever imagined. It was enough to quit my job, pay my team, and turn our night project into a real company. I need to think about this. Of course, but don't think too long. We're not the only ones interested. I'll email you our proposal. Please consider it carefully. After he hung up, I stood in the empty break room, staring at my phone. Everything had just changed. Within an hour, Klaus's email arrived with a detailed partnership proposal. Hartmann Industries wanted to license our technology for the European market, provide funding for further development, and establish a joint venture. The financial terms were generous, $600,000 up front, plus revenue sharing. I forwarded the email to the team with a simple message: emergency meeting tonight. Something big happened. By 7 p.m. everyone was at my apartment, gathered around my laptop as I explained the phone call and showed them the proposal. "This is insane," Maria said, reading through the contract terms. $600,000? Plus ongoing revenue sharing, Tom added. "Marcus, do you understand what this means?" I did, and I didn't. "It means we're not just building a prototype anymore. We're building a company." David was scrolling through the technical requirements. "They want us to scale it for 100,000 concurrent users within 6 months. That's enterprise-level deployment." "Can we do it?" Jake asked. "With proper funding and full-time dedication." "Absolutely," David replied, "but not as a side project." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. This wasn't just about proving Morrison wrong anymore. This was about making a life-changing decision. "There's something else," I said, pulling up another email. Klaus wasn't exaggerating about the interest. "I've received 3 more emails today from companies in the UK, Netherlands, and Sweden. All of them want to discuss partnerships." Tom laughed in disbelief. "Your prototype is going viral in Europe and Morrison called it trash." "The irony is incredible," Maria agreed. "But Marcus, you need to be careful. These are serious business deals with major legal implications." She was right. I pulled up my cousin's contact information. "Maria, can you call your cousin tonight? We need legal advice immediately." "Already on it," she said, dialing her phone. While Maria spoke with her cousin, the rest of us discussed the practical implications. If we accepted Hartmann's offer, we'd need to quit our jobs, incorporate as a company, and commit fully to the project. It was terrifying and exhilarating. "Marcus," Tom said, "you realize that if we do this, we can't go back to our old lives. This is all or nothing." "I know. Are you guys ready for that?" Jake grinned. "Are you kidding? This is what we've been working toward." "I'm in." "Me too," David said. "I've been waiting for an opportunity like this my entire career." Maria finished her call and rejoined the group. "Good news and bad news. The good news is that these offers are legitimate and the terms are favorable. The bad news is that we need to move fast. European tech companies don't wait around." "What's the timeline?" I asked. "If we want to accept Hartmann's offer, we need to respond within 48 hours. And we need to establish proper IP protections, and probably hire a proper tech lawyer." My head was spinning. 48 hours to make a decision that would change everything. "There's one more thing," Tom said quietly. "What about TechFlow? Are we going to tell them about the offers?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Legally, we didn't owe TechFlow anything. Our current work was completely independent. But ethically, the situation was more complex. "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me wants to walk into Morrison's office and show him what he missed, but another part of me just wants to leave quietly and build something amazing." "Whatever you decide, we're with you," Jake said. "But Marcus, you need to know this is your moment. Morrison tried to destroy your confidence, but instead he set you free. Don't let him take that away from you." That night, after the others left, I sat alone with my laptop, staring at Klaus Weber's email. The cursor blinked in the reply box, waiting for my response. My phone buzzed with a text from Ashley. "Haven't heard from you today, everything okay?" I called her immediately. "Ashley, something incredible has happened. I need to tell you about it." I explained everything. The phone call, the offers, the decision we faced. She listened without interrupting, occasionally asking clarifying questions. "So what are you going to do?" she asked when I finished. "I think I'm going to say yes to all of it." "That's a huge risk, Marcus." "I know, but it's also a huge opportunity. 3 weeks ago I was humiliated in front of investors. Now, those same investors are recommending me to European companies. If that's not a sign, I don't know what is." "What about us? If you start a company, what happens to our relationship?" It was a fair question. "I don't know, but I do know that if I don't take this chance, I'll regret it for the rest of my life." "Then you have to do it," she said simply. "You have to take the risk." "Really? Really? But Marcus, don't forget about the people who supported you when you were building this in your apartment. Success changes people, and not always for the better." After we hung up, I opened my laptop and began typing my response to Klaus Weber. It was time to bet everything on the technology that Morrison had called trash. "Dear Mr. Weber," I began, "thank you for your interest in our customer service automation platform. We would be delighted to discuss a partnership with Hartmann Industries." As I typed, I felt something I hadn't experienced since that terrible day in the conference room. Absolute certainty. This was the right decision. This was my moment. The next morning, I walked into TechFlow knowing it would be one of my last days there. The partnership agreements with Hartmann Industries and 2 other European companies were being finalized, and my lawyer had advised giving 2 weeks' notice immediately. But first, I had something to do. I found Morrison in his office, door open, typing aggressively on his laptop. "Richard, do you have a moment?" He looked up, his expression neutral. "Marcus, what can I do for you?" "I'm giving my 2 weeks' notice." His eyebrows raised slightly. "Really? Found something better?" "Actually, yes, I'm starting my own company." Morrison leaned back in his chair. "Let me guess, you're still working on that customer service thing I shut down?" "I am, and it's been quite successful." "Successful how?" I pulled out my phone and showed him the partnership agreements. 3 European companies want to license the technology. We're looking at about $1.2 million in first-year revenue. The color drained from Morrison's face as he read the contract summaries. These are legitimate companies. Very legitimate. Klaus Weber from Hartmann Industries called me directly. Apparently, one of your Singapore investors recorded my presentation and shared it with their European tech consortium. Morrison's jaw tightened. "The IP belongs to TechFlow. You developed this on company time." "Actually, no. I developed the original prototype here, but everything I'm commercializing was created independently. My lawyer confirmed we're completely in the clear." "Your lawyer?" Morrison stood up, his face flushing red. "You can't just—" "I can, and I am. The technology you called trash is about to revolutionize customer service in Europe. The same investors who witnessed you humiliate me are now funding my success." The office had gone quiet. Through the glass walls, I could see my colleagues watching the confrontation. Sarah was standing by her desk, arms crossed, wearing a satisfied smile. "This is corporate espionage," Morrison said, his voice rising. "I'll have legal review every line of code you've written. Go ahead. You'll find that everything I'm commercializing was developed after hours, on my own equipment, with my own resources. But Richard, there's something else you should know." I pulled up my phone and showed him a screenshot of a tech news website. The headline read, "European Tech Consortium invests in revolutionary AI customer service platform." The story went live an hour ago. Klaus Weber was interviewed about the partnership. He mentioned how the technology was initially rejected by its original company, despite obvious commercial potential. Morrison's face went from red to pale. "Are you trying to destroy TechFlow's reputation?" "I'm not trying to do anything to TechFlow. I'm building my own company. But actions have consequences, Richard. You chose to humiliate me publicly instead of recognizing innovation. Now the world gets to see what you missed." After leaving Morrison's office, I walked back to my desk to pack my personal items. The atmosphere in the office was electric. Everyone was talking about the confrontation, the news article, and the fact that I was leaving to start my own company. "Marcus!" Jake called out, approaching with barely contained excitement. "Did you see the article? It's being shared everywhere." I looked at his phone. The story had been picked up by TechCrunch, VentureBeat, and 3 other major tech publications. The narrative was compelling. Innovative developer creates revolutionary technology, gets rejected by short-sighted CEO, finds success in Europe. "This is insane," Maria said, joining us. "My LinkedIn is blowing up with people asking about the team behind the technology." "Same here," David added. "I've gotten 3 job offers just this morning." Tom appeared with his laptop. "Guys, you need to see this. The story is trending on Twitter, and the comments are brutal for TechFlow." I scrolled through the tweets. The tech community was not kind to Morrison or the company. This is why innovation dies in corporate America. Imagine being the CEO who called a $1 million idea trash. TechFlow's loss is Europe's gain. I want to know who this Marcus Chen is. His AI demo sounds incredible. Within hours, the story had taken on a life of its own. Tech journalists were reaching out for interviews. European companies were inquiring about partnerships. My LinkedIn profile had gone from 200 connections to over 3,000. "Marcus, I hate to interrupt," Sarah said, approaching our group, "but Morrison wants to see you in his office. Again." I found Morrison pacing behind his desk, his usually perfect hair disheveled. "Marcus, sit down. We need to talk." "I think we've said everything we need to say." "No, we haven't. This media attention is damaging TechFlow's reputation. I need you to issue a statement, clarifying that there are no hard feelings, that the company supported your innovation. I stared at him in disbelief. Are you serious? I'm offering you a deal. Stay at TechFlow, continue developing the technology here, and we'll give you a promotion to Senior Development Lead, plus a 20% raise. Richard, I have partnership agreements worth over $1 million. Why would I want a 20% raise? Because TechFlow can scale your technology globally. We have the resources, the connections, the infrastructure. Your little startup will struggle to compete. I stood up. You're right about one thing. TechFlow could have scaled this technology globally, but instead of supporting innovation, you chose to humiliate me. Now it's too late. Marcus, be reasonable. We made a mistake, but we can fix this. We? You made the mistake, Richard. You called my work trash and slammed my laptop shut in front of investors. There's no fixing that. As I walked out of his office for the final time, I heard him calling after me. You're making a huge mistake, Marcus. You'll regret this. But I wouldn't regret it. For the first time in months, I felt completely certain about my path forward. The rest of the day was a blur of congratulations, interviews, and planning sessions. By 5 p.m., I was emotionally exhausted, but exhilarated. The team gathered at my apartment one final time as TechFlow employees. Tomorrow we're entrepreneurs, Jake said, raising a beer. Are you guys ready for this? I've been ready my whole life, David replied. I just didn't know it until now. What about you, Marcus? Maria asked. Any second thoughts? I looked around at these 4 people who had believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. No second thoughts, just gratitude. My phone buzzed with a text from Ashley. Saw the news articles. I'm so proud of you. Dinner tonight to celebrate? I smiled, typing back. Absolutely, I have so much to tell you. As the evening wound down, Tom pulled me aside. Marcus, I want you to know, watching you stand up to Morrison today was inspiring. You could have taken the easy path, accepted his offer, stayed comfortable. Instead, you chose to bet on yourself. We all chose to bet on ourselves, I corrected. This isn't just my success story anymore. It's ours. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. 3 weeks ago, I was a humiliated employee with a rejected prototype. Now, I was the founder of a company with international partnerships and media attention. Morrison had tried to end my story, but instead he'd given me the motivation to write a better one. The technology he'd called trash was now being celebrated across 2 continents. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, incorporating the company, managing partnerships, scaling the technology. But tonight, I allowed myself to feel something I hadn't experienced in months: pride. I had taken the biggest risk of my life, and it was paying off. The prototype wasn't just surviving, it was thriving, and so was I. 6 months later, I stood in the lobby of our new office in downtown San Francisco, watching as the installation crew mounted our company logo on the wall, Empathy Tech Solutions. The space was modest, 2,000 square feet with room for 20 employees, but it felt like a palace compared to my cramped apartment where everything had started. Marcus, the reporter from Forbes is here, Maria called from the reception desk. She'd transitioned from UX designer to chief operating officer, and her organizational skills had become the backbone of our rapid growth. I straightened my tie and walked over to greet Jennifer Walsh, a senior tech journalist who'd been following our story since the initial European partnership announcement. Ms. Walsh, welcome to Empathy Tech. Thank you for making time for this interview, she said, looking around the bustling office. I have to say, this is quite different from the narrative 6 months ago. It's been a remarkable journey, I agreed, leading her to our conference room, the same one where we'd held our first official board meeting just 3 months earlier. As we sat down, Jennifer pulled out her recorder. Let's start with the numbers. Your platform is now deployed across 12 countries, handling over 50,000 customer interactions daily, with a 94% satisfaction rate. How does it feel to know that the technology Richard Morrison called trash is now being used by Fortune 500 companies? I smiled, thinking about how far we'd come. It's surreal, honestly, but more than vindication, it's validation that innovation can come from anywhere, even from a rejected presentation in a corporate boardroom. Speaking of Morrison, TechFlow announced layoffs last month. Any thoughts on that? I paused, choosing my words carefully. I don't take any pleasure in TechFlow's struggles. The company has talented people who deserve opportunities, but it does highlight the importance of recognizing and nurturing innovation rather than dismissing it. Through the conference room window, I could see Jake and David working with our newest hire, a brilliant machine learning specialist we'd recruited from Google. Tom was in the next room, conducting a video call with our UK partners. The team had grown from our original 5 to 18 employees, each one carefully selected for both technical skills and cultural fit. "Tell me about the culture you've built here," Jennifer continued. "Your employee satisfaction ratings are extraordinarily high." "We learned something important during those late nights in my apartment," I said. "Great technology comes from passionate people who feel valued and heard. Every employee here has equity in the company. Every voice matters in product decisions, and we never ever dismiss someone's ideas without proper consideration." After the interview, I walked through the office, checking in with different teams. The energy was infectious. People were excited about their work, collaborating openly, and pushing the boundaries of what our platform could achieve. "Marcus, you have a few minutes?" Sarah called from her office. She'd joined us 2 months ago as VP of Strategic Partnerships, leaving TechFlow along with 6 other engineers who'd grown disillusioned with Morrison's leadership style. "Always. What's up?" "I just got off the phone with Klaus Weber. Hartmann Industries wants to discuss expanding our partnership to include their South American operations. They're talking about a potential $3 million contract." The numbers still amazed me. We'd gone from a rejected prototype to a company with $8 million in annual recurring revenue, with projections to hit $20 million by year's end. "There's something else," Sarah continued. "Klaus mentioned that Morrison reached out to him directly, trying to position TechFlow as a competitor to our platform." This wasn't surprising. In the months since our launch, Morrison had been desperately trying to develop a competing product, but without the foundational AI architecture we'd built, their efforts had been unsuccessful. What did Klaus tell him? That Hartmann Industries was very happy with their current AI provider and had no interest in changing. I laughed. "I almost feel bad for him." "Almost. Don't. He made his choice when he humiliated you in front of investors. Now he's living with the consequences." That evening, I had dinner with Ashley at our favorite restaurant in the Mission District. Our relationship had survived the transition from employee to entrepreneur, though it had required constant communication and compromise. "So, Forbes tomorrow?" she asked, cutting into her salmon. "The article publishes tomorrow. Jennifer said it's going to be the cover story for their technology issue." "That's incredible. You're going to be on the cover of Forbes." I still couldn't quite believe it. "Remember when you told me not to lose myself in the project? I've been thinking about that a lot lately." "Have you? Lost yourself, I mean?" "I don't think so. But success changes things. The money, the recognition, the responsibility. It's all intoxicating. I have to consciously work to stay grounded." "What keeps you grounded?" I thought about it. Remembering why we started this, it wasn't about money or fame. It was about creating something meaningful, and remembering the people who believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. After dinner, we walked along the waterfront, the city lights reflecting off the bay. "Ashley, I want to ask you something." "Okay, move in with me. I know the timing might seem crazy with everything that's happening, but I love you and I want to build a life together." She stopped walking and turned to face me. "Are you sure? Your life is pretty complicated right now." "I'm sure. Success without someone to share it with is just another form of loneliness." She smiled and kissed me. "Yes, I'd love to move in with you." The next morning I woke up to dozens of notifications on my phone. The Forbes article was live, and the response was overwhelming. My LinkedIn had crashed from too many connection requests. The company email was flooded with partnership inquiries and job applications, but the message that meant the most was from my sister, Emma. "Saw the article. I always knew you'd change the world. Love you, big brother." At the office, the team had gathered around Tom's laptop, reading the article together. The headline read, "From Trash to Treasure, How One Rejected Prototype Became a $20 million Company." "Listen to this," Jake said, reading aloud. "Chen's story illustrates a fundamental truth about innovation. Revolutionary ideas often face initial rejection from those too invested in the status quo to recognize transformative potential." "She really captured the essence of what happened," Maria added. "This isn't just about one company's success. It's about the importance of believing in your vision, even when others don't." Later that day, I received an unexpected call from an unknown number. "Marcus, this is Richard Morrison." I hesitated before responding. "Hello, Richard. I saw the Forbes article. Congratulations on your success." "Thank you. I want you to know that I've been doing some soul-searching since you left. I made a mistake that day in the conference room. I let pressure and fear cloud my judgment, and I treated you unprofessionally. I was surprised by the admission. I appreciate you saying that. I'm not calling to ask for anything. I just wanted to acknowledge that you were right and I was wrong. Your technology is revolutionary and I should have supported you instead of dismissing you. Richard, No, let me finish. I've learned something important from this experience. Good leaders don't just recognize talent. They nurture it even when it challenges their assumptions. I failed to do that with you, and it cost both of us. After he hung up, I sat in my office, processing the conversation. Morrison's apology didn't change what had happened, but it did provide a sense of closure I hadn't realized I needed. That evening, as I walked through the office one final time before heading home, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. 6 months ago, I was a humiliated employee with a rejected prototype. Now I was the CEO of a rapidly growing company, featured on magazine covers, and recognized as an innovator in my field. But the real victory wasn't the money or the recognition. It was the proof that innovation could overcome rejection, that persistence could triumph over dismissal, and that sometimes the worst moments in our lives can become the catalyst for our greatest achievements. I turned off the lights and locked the door, looking one last time at the EmpathyTech logo on the wall. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, and new possibilities, but tonight I allowed myself to feel something I'd earned through months of hard work and determination: peace. Morrison had tried to end my story by calling my work trash. Instead, he'd given me the motivation to write a better ending, one where innovation triumphed, where talent was recognized, and where the power of believing in yourself could transform rejection into success. The prototype wasn't trash, after all. It was the foundation for everything I'd built since, and everything I'd build in the future.